And I'm happy to answer that as the marketing chump on the stage. That is, honestly, that's something I struggle with my clients all the time, is that they want to take every campaign and kind of focus it through that mommy lens. And what I tell them is, once a woman has kids, that doesn't mean that she then automatically stops caring about fashion or politics or news or film or any of that. I don't know why it's so hard. I don't know why we keep having those battles. I would guess it's largely driven by mainstream media coverage. Mainstream media, 2009 was the year of the mommy blogger. 2010 was the year of the daddy blogger. And so when our clients and when some of the people within the industry are seeing that, they're thinking, oh, this is the way to go. Just kind of slap the mommy label on it and go to it. But all I can tell you is that there are people within the industry working to make sure that moms and dads are perceived as people with more diverse interests. One thing we do see is that nuance is really hard to express both within the marketing community and also online. Online is a place where nuance also gets lost very easily.
May I?
Sure.
You said that, and it's a recent development, it's just because of your blog that people are only seeing you as a mother. And if so, I hate to say it, but that's tremendous. Maybe this is where I grew up and maybe this is where my experience, but I was always raised that, oh, that woman, she's a mom, and that's the only thing about her. And I think actually, as much as there are so many women who write fantastic blogs who get shoehorned into this mommy blogger thing and are marketed to a certain way, I think actually the internet has done more in terms of providing a diverse range of voices of women who do have children and who don't, and have a huge range of interests, and given them an opportunity to speak back to marketers and say that this isn't what they want anymore.
Question?
Hi, how you doing? I'm Charles Davis. I'm a, budding anthropologist turned planner, and I work at Tribal, which is a digital division of DDB, and so I study a lot about identities, and we talked about identities and kind of dealing with the way that the panel was set up in order to address issues of gender, issues of race. But one thing that I wanted to know is, your advice as journalists and people that are often bringing voices to public, what role, or in what ways do you think that people in advertising or in marketing can do when they're approached to be kind of like the sole representative of an individual group and bringing out the voices that are marginalized within that group? So if you're looking at the layers in which maybe we're going to ask a guy about things that are racially implicated, in what ways can you advocate for issues that are about sexism and heterosexism and all these multiple layers that are kind of brought into the conversation? And just any advice you have from a journalistic perspective that would benefit planners and people that work in marketing and advertising.
Have a broad Rolodex. And just, introduce people to people and, be aware of, what, speak authoritatively about the things you're authoritative about, and, where not, it's easy to hand over an email or, introduce someone or hand them a URL and say, hey, here's where I think you should go for some of the other perspectives that are lacking. The thing that, continues to be frustrating in the mainstream media, and I worked in mainstream media for 14 years, was just it's the same voices, the same people, and I'm not even just talking about the journalists, but they're quoting the same people and having the same people on the air and all those things, and as a result, and there is a method to that madness, because some people might say, within, say, the Black community, it's like, well, why are Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson always on air? But the thing is these, the bookers know exactly how to get them, and they know that they will get there on time or early and be great television and all of these things. And, for television especially, I don't say this to dump on television, because certainly at Newsweek, we quoted the same, limited group of people in a number of cases, but it was really just sort of like the anchors are almost traffic cops or images that are sort of going through, and if that looks on air to you in the 5 seconds you see it as what the story's supposed to be, then you just kind of nod and and keep going. So that's what you got to do, is just sort of broaden the Rolodex.
I would also say to take the audience seriously as a participant, and if there is only one person at the company who you can ask about a particular issue or about a particular group, find someone else, and that may be, like Nagai said, asking an expert, but it might also mean throw out a test balloon and see how your audience responds to it, and take those responses really seriously.
Yeah, and I was interested in what you said about the fact that that a lot of these things are overlapping, or that one tends to specialize, and how can you kind of how can you think about the fact that, for example, something that historically in the feminist movement, Black women in feminism being told that they have to choose between like representing blackness and representing being a woman. The internet obviously allows people to represent those different identities at different points along a spectrum because it's happening over time. But I mean, you will be really reminded by your audience what you're not getting, and we've talked a lot about not just necessarily listening to the same voice, but you can find them if you look. You can find people to represent those perspectives, and you have to obviously figure out a way to engage them and build bridges with them that isn't condescending and isn't like, oh, I need a trans person, can you get in on this? But one way that we've managed to do it is we have now, this is a company-wide thing where we republish posts from other blogs. So we try really hard to find blogs that have perspectives. For example, I posted something from someone in Texas talking about how a broader legislation issue was affecting them. I don't live in Texas. Thinking about what you don't know and admitting that you don't know, I think is a really big part of it, and thinking about how you can actually not just say I'm calling on you once, but I'm bringing you into the conversation and hoping that makes them so prominent that somebody else, a booker maybe, will think about calling them first.
And I experience that a lot as well, also as kind of the unofficial mommy blogger expert. A lot of teams bring me programs and they say, what do you think? Will this work with moms? I'm not a mom. I say, I don't know. Why don't you let me ask one? And I don't know why this thought doesn't naturally occur to people. Like, it's not that hard to find a mom and say, hey, just out of curiosity, what do you think about this? Does this work for you?
Yeah. I mean, one other thing I was going to say is that I have a friend, you may know him, who edits a video game magazine, and he said to me, tell me what I can do to get more women writing for me. And it's not necessarily writing something on the internet that says, do you want to write about video games and are you a woman? But maybe what it is, having them do a guest post and then seeing who comes out of the woodwork and seeing who are some interesting, strong voices, and not saying like, how do I find some Black people? Like, maybe it's also doing something that actually in good faith engages some of the issues that matter to different communities.
I want to take a question back here. I know you've been waiting.
Oh, I know. Thank you. I'm one of those mom bloggers, but I also am a marketing person for the last 20 years, so I understand the whole large demographic that you're going after. But and this is more of a comment because I know Nancy, and all of us here in the city talk about this, is the lack of thought process from the PR community and how you target us mom bloggers, because we get pitched all the time for things that are not relevant to our lives, and not so much the mom stuff. It makes no sense, and in the end, it actually damages the brand, because you are actually not, we talk amongst ourselves. We talk on Twitter. We can't figure out why, I have a tween and I'm getting pitched Pampers. It makes no sense.
Yeah,
so that's just a comment, and in the end, it doesn't help the brand.
And I would love to have a conversation with you about that. I'm actually a person, I go to a lot of mommy blogger conferences or conferences marketed directly to mom bloggers, and my job is to stand up there and be the lightning rod for all the bad marketing that's going on. So that's a really exciting 3 days for me. But all that I can say about that is that unfortunately within the industry, within both the agency side and the client side, a lot of our clients are still not understanding the importance of this audience and reaching them and communicating to them in a very authentic way. And oftentimes things like pitching bloggers falls to the most junior staff. Because nobody wants to invest the time and the money and the resources in it. And so you have a bunch of 23-year-old girls who are trying to relate and have conversations with moms, and sometimes they're getting it really wrong. I don't want to get into a situation, kind of building on what we've talked about here, where it has to be like to like. I don't want to say that only moms can market to moms, only feminists can market to feminists, only gamers can market to gamers, because I really do think that as an industry, we're better than that and we're smarter than that, but it is a challenge going on, and the smart people in the industry are listening to the conversations and are trying to change that, but it is a process. And if you feel like you've received a bad pitch, the onus is certainly not on you, but by all means, if you feel like taking the time, write back to the person and say, you know what, this doesn't work for me. you spelled my name wrong. I've got older kids. Why are you pitching me baby bottles? All of that. And then hopefully some of that will be a wake-up call. And hopefully some of that will trickle up to leadership that helps us make those decisions about having those conversations.
And if I could just add more broadly, I think any person who gets pitched will say that they love when they get pitched something that makes sense to them, and that almost never happens. I mean, I almost fall over. I think I can count, like, on one hand the amount of times that I've gotten a pitch from someone that's not someone I know and who sends something that I'm really excited about. We get most of our best pitches from our readers. But the times that it's happened, it's been triumphant. I mean, just this week, the publicist from NBC pitched us that Law and Order SVU was doing a Duke Laylist episode and put on the producer. And then, so we teased the episode before it was up because it made sense. A lot of our readers are fans. It's something that we covered before. And then the executive producer agreed to go into the comments and answer questions. Our readers had so many questions about the way that the show is. And the guy hung out for hours and then came back later. And I just thought, God bless you, NBC publicist, because this is a win-win.
And I thought I followed that. Obviously, I thought it was very brave because you were essentially talking about how rape is portrayed on television. So that's the kind of thing where you could see an NBC exec or producer does not necessarily want to get involved in, but he put himself right in the middle of it, and that was awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, people were really pushing hard at him. They said, how could you cast Ice-T, when he used to be a pimp and he used to exploit women? And how could you... do you ever wonder if the way that you're representing these really serious things is traumatizing to survivors or titillating? And he just came in and he answered it in good faith, and I think they all said, wow, these people are really thoughtful. I can feel better about liking this show.
Take another question from the back.
Am I in the back? Hi, I'm Danielle. I work at Ketchum. And I work with Nancy, and while she's kind of the mommy blogger, I have to work with mainstream magazines, and particularly women's magazines. So I'd love to get your perspective, about how sites that can empower women and kind of sometimes, with the covers, and you make fun of the women's magazines sometimes, and, taking into account the recent Marie Claire drama, and I was wondering what you think about what's going to happen for the future of the mainstream media and how they're going to adapt to the blogs and all of the things that are happening right now in your space.
Well, and we've all in this panel been guilty of using the term mainstream media a bit, and so I kind of want to elaborate a bit on what I think that means, particularly in the women's sphere. But I think as more and more people have more and more access to technology, there used to be 3 television channels and now there are thousands. And there used to not be an internet and now there is. I think that the definition of mainstream media changes every day. I consider Jezebel mainstream media because I read it every day, but there are probably people in America who don't. And so I think that as the definition of mainstream media changes and media is more specialized and people can find a website or a magazine or a blog that covers a topic that they're interested in, it's going to be harder and harder for anybody to say that they have a claim on the mainstream. So when it comes to women's issues, the reason that so many blogs that criticize women's magazines have done well is that for a long time, if women were unhappy with the magazine, they could send a letter to the editor, and that was kind of their only recourse. They could say, well, I'm going to stop subscribing, and that was it. And now there are sites that they can go to where they find content that might mean more to them or that addresses an issue they feel that's been left out. So I think it's going to be a back and forth conversation. I think it's going to be a dialogue between all the different forms of media.